There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Well, hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to another Friday Reads filmed on Thursday night, Tokyo time, and I've got quite a bit to tell you. As usual, because I'm still reading a bunch of other good books that aren't going to show up in this particular Friday read, I feel like it's been a far better week than what I have to tell you will suggest. So, yeah, let's keep things in perspective. I have one Bale to tell you about. I didn't get very much further into the Late Mrs Priolo by Monica Tyndall, Ursula Orange's sister-in-law. Yeah, it was dreadful. It was a stupid mystery with characters that were so flat and uninteresting that I got to page 69 and realized that I had not a rat's ass to give about any of it, and so I left poor Leah in the lurch. I've done it to her before. She's used to it. Yeah, this was trash. And I have finished 3 books. I'm going to not reveal them to you in the order in which I finished them. I'm going to start with Alice Munro. Let's start with the positive. Runaway is one of her, maybe her penultimate short story collection? I don't know. It was published in 2004, and I loved it. This was a buddy read with Kendra Winchester. It was a 5-star read. I mean, I might as well just assign the star rating before I even open the book. It's Alice Munro. This is one of the short story collections that, more than most, is really concentrated on the theme of running away from your life, chance encounters, coincidences, finding each other after running away from each other decades before. The stories really resonated one to the other. There's also a 3-story cycle in here that was absolutely to die for, with the same woman from story to story at various points in her life. Starting, if I'm remembering correctly, with a chance encounter on a cross-country train trip across Canada, which brought back memories of an episode from my love life, to put it euphemistically, that started on a cross-country train ride that I told Kendra about, and we bonded over my wild and crazy personal life in the 1990s. The story in here about that was even more stunning than my personal reminiscence. This was incredible. The other 2 were for Black History Month, and I'm always a little bit uncomfortable when I don't like a book that is written by somebody of a race or anything, a disadvantaged minority race or something, the word that I'm not a part of as a white guy. What is the phrase Greg always uses? I noticed how adorable, not how lovely it sounds rolling off your tongue. If you've been following along, I think is what he says. So if you've been following along, you know that I don't usually let that hold me back from doing full-scale rant, but I am going to kind of rein myself in a bit because, just because. I'm still going to tell you exactly what I felt, but I also think that neither of these books were written for me, and that's the most important part of my review. They were not written for me. I was not the target audience. The fact that I didn't like them is really unimportant. And this is my BookTube channel, so I still get to talk about what I didn't like, but I'm purposefully not ranting. I don't always factor that in, but it just feels, I don't know, just with stuff going on in the world and kind of going on in my personal life about racist shitheads and stuff, I just don't feel like, yeah, that's kind of, I'm calling it along these lines. So Roz said when I predicted this would be one of my top reads of 2021 and that I was predicting it to be a 5-star, she said I was probably jinxing it, and she was right, because I didn't end up really caring for The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. I gave it 3 stars. So let me tell you what I loved, because there were things that I loved, or else it would have been a 1-star read, because the things I hated, I really hated. I loved the love story. The 2 enslaved young men, I think they were in their late teens, on this Mississippi plantation during the slavery era, obviously. I was convinced by the love when very little else in the novel was personally convincing to me. Felt quite affected in places. I bought into the love story, hook, line, and sinker, and that was so well done. And perhaps even more resonant for me, more of a stunning achievement, was that these young lads who were enslaved and parentless, with no family, in the midst of all the other enslaved folk on this plantation. Robert Jones Jr. showed, in a way that I will never forget, what their love meant to the other black folk in the story, in a way that I'd never thought about those sorts of things before. It was something new that he'd communicated through the story that was indelible. Absolutely beautiful. Like it was something newly imagined. It felt like to me, certainly something that I had never imagined, and I felt it in a really layered way. It was incredible. Everything else I didn't really like. So, with a few exceptions, I didn't really care for the writing. I thought it was quite overwritten, and it read like a third draft that needed to go through about 17 more drafts, and it could have been a stunning novel. I thought there was a lot of excessive metaphorizing and maximizing. What do I mean maximizing? Instead of making straightforward statements, he would turn so many mundane things into something that was kind of grasping toward being a pithy statement, but didn't quite get there, and those started to really accumulate for me and pull me out of the story, I have to say. Now, there were some stunning passages. It was really uneven, and I don't want to go overboard and say that there wasn't some really fine writing in here. There was. The writing, for the most part, didn't work for me, and worked for a lot of other readers, black, white, and queer, and otherwise. I didn't think the characters really jumped off the page. I believed in the love between Samuel and Isaiah, but I didn't know them. I didn't get to know them at all. There was a few little things that he described about their characters, but not enough. And same for all of the other characters. I thought the portrayal of the white characters was especially poor. I didn't really feel very much about the people in the story. There was too many people in the story, and one of his overarching points that I think Robert Jones Jr. was trying to show was that the most powerful resistance to all of that hatred and ownership and horrific, racism is just a weak word for what happened during the era of slavery, that holding on to love is the best revenge, and that he created a couple scenes, including the final scene, and I'm not going to give you any spoilers about anything, but that to me just they didn't work, because I didn't believe that the characters would, in the midst of incredible violence and things that were even beyond violence, that they were holding on to and more aware of the love in their heart than what was happening to them. I just didn't buy it. I wasn't convinced. I think lots of other readers were. So that's great. I think you should try it. I think you shouldn't listen to me, other than that I'm a voice out there in the wilderness that's saying, no, I don't buy the hype. I didn't think it was very good. I think he could become a really great writer. I will follow his career. But with a few bright spots that I mentioned, this was otherwise a fairly sizable disappointment for me. I'm going to talk even less about the next one, because it definitely wasn't for me on every single level. It wasn't for me, and that was, I did on audio, the memoir All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. It's a YA memoir about being black and queer, published fairly recently. Greg of Supposedly Fun talked about it on his channel, and that's how it came onto my radar. It was on Scribd. It was only 5 hours or something, so I listened to it this week. And it's for young black queer people, and it's very much of a self-help type of memoir. I don't like memoir, and I sure don't like self-help memoirs. Once I realized what it was, maybe I should have bailed, but I thought that would be somehow ruder than experiencing it right to the end, which I did. This book will probably help a lot of the people that it's targeted towards, so my opinion could not be more irrelevant. But I just thought the writing was really awful, laden with the kind of trendy psychological jargon agency and stuff like that. That just made my skin crawl. Probably almost everybody in the generation that it's targeted towards wouldn't have those hang-ups. So that's great. I hope it touches a lot of people. I love the cover image. I loved George M. Johnson's reading voice. And by the end, that was all I liked. And I told you I was going to start 2. I only ended up starting 1. And that was Luster by Raven Leilani. And I am 70 pages into it. And I'm quite enjoying it. It's sitting at about a 4-star read right now. I started it on audio, thinking that when convenient I would do it as audio text combo, but when I was out and about I would just listen to it. And I ultimately fell deeply out of love with the audio narration, so I abandoned it. And that caused all kinds of chaos for my new 6-book rule, because there I was just reading it. So I was, for a few days there, I was reading 7 books. Now back down to 6. It's good. It's very in your face. I really like the protagonist, Edie, and her life is really, on so many levels, effed up, and that is very appealing. There are some racial gender dynamics between her and her married boyfriend. I don't think boyfriend is quite the word, but the guy she's sleeping with, who is carrying on with her with his wife's knowledge and uncomfortable consent. That's probably all I'll say for now, but there's been a few times where I was thinking, oh, maybe this is going to end up taking a nosedive, but no, it rescues itself, and I think it's quite something. So that, so far, is a qualified success. I did not get to Tony K. Bambera's Gorilla My Love. This may be something that I buddy read later in the year with somebody, but I won't commit them or myself to that, but I am disappointed I didn't quite get to this one for Black History Month. So, at the moment, how many books am I still currently reading? I have this all worked out. For my 6, I am now reading 5, right? I'm reading 5. Monday is March 1st, so by then I should have cleared 2 more off of my plate, which means that I will be ready to start 3 new books next week. And the other 2, which are longer and are slower reads, I might happen to finish 1 or both of them before next Friday. Who knows? But I'm going to tell you about the 3 that I'm going to start. 2 of them are buddy reads. Doris of Aldi Books and I are reading A Ghost in the Throat by Doreen Negrifa. I've talked about it on my Irish TBR, and if you don't know about the Irish Readathon, I have put links to all the organizers' announcement videos, and you should definitely take part. And I think Jackie, Irish Jackie, and I will be starting this on Monday too. Mary Costello's The River Capture, which I've heard good things about, and it will be my first buddy read with Irish Jackie, so I'm looking forward to that. So that leaves 1 more, and for Invisible Cities in March, the 3 countries are Libya, Mexico, and Iraq. I considered skipping Iraq altogether just because I feel like I've been so saturated with news from Iraq for the last 20-25 years that I just feel a resistance to trying to sink into a novel. But I talked myself out of it when I found out about this novel, which just came in the mail today. So this is what I'm going to start. The 3rd book I will start next week is an Iraqi novel, The Book of Collateral Damage by Sinan Antoun, translated from the Arabic by Jonathan Wright. Isn't that a gorgeous cover? And it is about a young Iraqi scholar doing his doctorate at Harvard, and he is hired by filmmakers who are doing a documentary about the invasion, the American invasion, 2003. And in his work with that, he encounters an eccentric bookseller in Baghdad who has been documenting absolutely everything about Iraqi history, culture, literature, and so on. And that's all I know about the story. That's certainly all I want to know, and it sounds really interesting. I found out about it by doing a search on Scribd, and they have the audiobook. So I previewed the audiobook and realized I could get this book fast and affordably, so I have the book as of today. And then I tested the audio a little bit more. I don't think the voice is going to hold my interest, so I think I will just do this as a standalone book. And what is up with the last 3 or 4 audiobooks I've listened to? I am realizing when I'm doing audio text combos that the audio narrators make a lot of mistakes. It almost is enough to put me off audiobooks altogether, because if you're not reading along, you wouldn't notice. But some really embarrassing mistakes, like the kind of mistakes where they must have been thinking about what they were going to have for lunch that day, like they couldn't have been listening to themselves. So, for example, in the epigrams, there are several epigrams to this book, and one of them is from Jorge Luis Borges, from A New Refutation of Time, and the first sentence of that epigraph, did I say epigram or epigraph? I usually can keep those distinct in my mind, so I will edit this out if I didn't make that mistake. The first sentence of that 3.5-line epigraph is, "Time is the substance I am made of. Time is a river which sweeps me along, but I am the river." And the audio narrator read that as, "But I am not the river." Well, like hello, that's a serious mistake. And I have encountered at least a half dozen like that change the meaning in all of the audiobooks I've been listening to recently. Quality control, people. Quality control. I have a good feeling about this. I hope I'm right. I'm not going to predict a 5-star read. I'm looking forward to giving it a try. This is his 4th novel. He's a poet, novelist, and translator and professor at New York University. Born in Baghdad, he left Iraq after the Gulf War. And the other day, it suddenly occurred to me that I could squeeze one more Irish readathon book in via audiobook. So I think the one I'm going to choose is the audiobook of this one, Big Girl, Small Town by Michelle Gallen, because, boy, Ronan Hession loved this one. And then I got some comments, I think, from Aoife. I think it was Aoife that loved this. She left a really enthusiastic comment, lengthy, wonderful comment on my TBR video, and seconded Ronan's enthusiasm. And so I found that the audiobook is on Scribd, and the narrator is one of the actors for The Dairy Girls. I knew the name of that. It's a series that's maybe on Netflix. I don't watch anything, but I listened to 30 seconds of her reading the first 2.5 sentences of the first chapter, and I fell in love with her narration. So yeah, I'm gonna do it, and mostly just audio only, but I have the book to refer to as well. So that will be my audiobook component, to add one more book, so I can do 6 plus the audiobook. I'm excited about that. So I have got my reading cut out for me. What a lovely bunch of books they seem to be, and what a lovely bunch of people you seem to be. Prove it. Give me a comment. Thanks for watching.
Oh, there's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.